Okay, part three. So, transmedia storytelling, and this is one that we can take as a bit of a case study. And this is the story of Sherlock Holmes. So, originally written by Arthur Conan Doyle, and it's been retold in films, from the early 20th century right the way through. And more recently, we also have the TV show of Sherlock, which, if you've looked on Moodle, you'll know that in the to watch file are all of the episodes of Sherlock that we can access on Box of Broadcasts, which has access for anyone with a UK educational email account. Anyone can go on there and watch loads of different TV shows, but I've brought together all of the episodes that have been broadcast of Sherlock. I think it's about 10 or 11 episodes, something like that. So the TV shows of Sherlock stick to the original story of Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes, but, and here's the important thing, the BBC have made this a transmedia storytelling form by producing this personal blog of John Watson, so Dr. Watson. And this expands the original Conan Doyle stories, because what we get is the background to this character of Watson, and he gets his own voice. And we can go and have a look at that blog, but we can also we can find out more about these characters by turning to social media. So if you go and have a look on Twitter, you'll find that there are further details of each of these characters. The BBC's website, as it has there, you can actually have a go at solving a crime like Sherlock. So, that's more interactive and franchise-like, because there's not necessarily anything new there. It's actually this blog that makes it new and transmedial. And as I say, certainly the use of Twitter as well. But, even the TV shows of Sherlock are nudging towards this notion of certainly being multimodal, because we have part of the story appearing on screen in text messages. So, we are having a different mode being introduced on screen. So that makes it multimodal, but it becomes transmedial once we actually have the story being told in different parts elsewhere. And it enriching our knowledge of the Sherlock Holmes story world. So why bother to make a story transmedial? Why not just have the novel and then have the film that just repeats the novel? Why bother to actually increase it beyond a book and a film and perhaps a game? Why bother to actually include now the use of social media and additional forms, like games and so on, but particularly social media? Why do we bother to do that? Well, we do it partly because, as it says, 90% of all media interactions, this is from 8 years ago, are screen-based. So we spend a lot of time. So 8 years ago, we were spending 4.4 hours of our leisure time in front of screens each day. We probably spend more than that now. And that has become really important to us, that actually we use our phones. We spend a great deal of time looking at our phones. We spend a great deal of time on the internet, whether that's using social media or playing games that are online, and on gaming platforms and so on, streaming TV shows. So the digital revolution has become really central to our lives. And if we can make the stories of stories around us, if we can make them richer by having them in multiple different forms and different elements of the story in these different forms, then it's more engaging for us. So that's the thing. It's about keeping us engaged. It's not about simply repeating the same story all the time, but actually telling the story in different forms. So that's telling different elements of the story in different forms. That's the thing to remember. It's not a repetition. For something to be truly transmedial, it needs to be an expansion. So, summing up, we can look at any discourse as a world. If we see a form, for example, if we have to fill out a form for some reason, a government form, for example, or a university form, that's a world. There are certain rules and certain things that are the norm within a form, and it's the world of the form. So any discourse at all we can see as a world. Story world, however, is not the real world, but it's actually how a particular world of a story functions. So it's that world of Harry Potter, or that world of the Hunger Games, or whatever, that world of Sherlock Holmes. And there are some things in it that might be exactly the same as our own world, and there will be other things perhaps that aren't quite the same. But it's a world on its own, and they absolutely help the audiences to immerse or transport themselves quickly and easily. We go into this world, we lose ourselves in these worlds, and we can stay in these worlds for longer if we have a transmedial storytelling experience. So if we can actually experience a bit of the world of Sherlock Holmes by having a look at his or some of the related characters' social media, that will help to bring us back to enjoying the world of Sherlock Holmes that we've perhaps enjoyed in Sherlock, or the world of Sherlock Holmes that we've enjoyed in the Conan Doyle novels and short stories. So, it's absolutely about going back and enjoying another element of that story world, and that story world being allowed to grow. So franchises, remember, are not the same as transmedial storytelling. If something simply retells the same story just in a different media, that's not transmedial. To be transmedial, it needs to expand the story world. There needs to be something new. And we're definitely going to see much more transmedial storytelling as the digital age develops, because it's exciting and it's interesting and it's fun to actually create and to develop, because it means that that world ends up having a shared ownership. And it's not necessarily just the original author. Certainly that's the case, with J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter. Harry Potter is not just under her ownership. It has expanded. And, we can say as well that things like fan fiction come into that, and that allows us to spend more time in that particular world, which is something, who wouldn't want to spend a bit of time in an imaginary world where things that happen are organised, and there's a happy ending, and it's a far more pleasant experience, perhaps, certainly maybe at the moment with the way that the world is. Who wouldn't want to spend some time in an imaginary world where magic exists? So yeah, it's something we will see more and more of, and keep an eye out for it and look at how the transmedial storytelling works. And think about whether or not, in keeping with the essay question, think about whether or not it's fun. And if it is fun, what makes it fun? How does it operate? And what are the different elements of it? So for those of you that are doing the essay for this particular question, one key thing to remember is that the essay question asks you to use some examples, and it's examples of transmedial storytelling, but not necessarily different stories. So, if you're going to do some transmedial storytelling, you're going to look at, say, Star Wars, or Star Trek or something similar. Just look at how that particular story has been told in multiple different ways, and how the story has been expanded in different forms. So it's the different forms that you're looking at and how they link in together, how they connect to one another, rather than, oh, I'm going to look at Star Trek, I'm also going to look at Star Wars, and I'm also going to look at Pokemon, because you'll have way too much. So stick to one story and look at how the different elements connect together and how they are truly transmedial. Or maybe they're not. Maybe you choose something and actually you look at it and you realise, actually, this is just retelling the same story over and over again. It's quite legitimate to look at that and to point out how it's not truly transmedial, but in fact it's simply a franchise. And we can discuss this more in the seminars.